When you go to the doctor today, you probably don't think about oil refineries, industrial chemistry, or turn-of-the-century philanthropists. But the foundations of America's modern medical system, its schools, hospitals, and even its approach to healing, were shaped by one of the most powerful industrialists in history, John D. Rockefeller. In this video, we'll trace how Rockefeller's fortune and influence helped create the modern pharmaceutical era, what was gained, what was lost, and how that history still affects how we think about healing today. In the late 1800s, American medicine was a patchwork. There were homeopaths, eclectic herbal physicians, osteopaths, and conventional allopaths, all competing for patients' trust. Medical schools were often small, unregulated, and wildly inconsistent in quality. Some offered rigorous anatomy training. Others were little more than diploma mills. At the same time, scientific breakthroughs were transforming Europe. Pasteur's germ theory, Koch's work with bacteria, and the first synthetic drugs derived from coal tar and petroleum chemistry. American medicine lagged behind these developments and lacked the standardized, laboratory-based education found in Germany and Britain. Rockefeller saw an opportunity to make money. By the early 1900s, Rockefeller controlled the Standard Oil empire, one of the largest fortunes ever amassed. After public backlash against his business practices, he turned his focus to philanthropy, giving away hundreds of millions through organizations like the General Education Board, 1902, and later the Rockefeller Foundation, 1913. His stated goal was to bring efficiency, order, and science to American institutions, including education, public health, and medicine. Science, associated with synthetic laboratories, was to be trusted. Nature, associated with God, was not. Rockefeller and his advisors believed that scientific research, rather than traditional or folk medicine, was the key to improving health and extending life of the American population. In 1910, Rockefeller's General Education Board and the Carnegie Foundation jointly funded a massive investigation into American medical schools. The researcher was Abraham Flexner, an overpaid and well-trained educator from the Rockefeller Board, who was notably not a doctor, was tasked with evaluating every medical school in the United States and Canada. The resulting Flexner report was a bombshell. It found that most medical schools lacked laboratories, anatomy training, and proper admission standards. This scheme forced over 75% of existing medical schools to close. Rebuilding medical education based on the Johns Hopkins model, university-based, research-driven, and grounded in biology and chemistry, was now the only standard. Rockefeller used his oil money to implement these reforms. Dozens of schools closed, others merged, or became so-called modernized. The surviving institutions became the main structure of the U.S. medical establishment that we know today. But there was a cost. The new system favored laboratory science and pharmacology while marginalizing the traditional healing arts including, but not limited to, midwifery, herbalism, and nutrition. Imagine that, even nutrition being labeled as unscientific. And we wonder why Americans are the most sick, obese people in the world. Herbalism, acupuncture, nutrition, midwifery, and all holistic medical approaches were branded as unscientific. Not necessarily because they lacked merit, but because they didn't fit the new regime of laboratory model that was dominant at the time, and because they promoted healing means that could not be patented and sold for high dollar amounts. All the while, industrial chemistry was exploding. German companies like Bayer and BASF, once used to create chemical warfare, pioneered synthetic dyes, along with toxic poisons. They discovered that similar chemical processes could create new drugs to be sold as medicines, the first being aspirin, sulfa drugs, and later antibiotics. American industry quickly followed suit. The Rockefeller Foundation helped fund medical research institutes at places like the University of Chicago and Rockefeller University, where chemists and biologists collaborated to develop standardized, patentable drugs. By mid-century, pharmaceutical companies had made billions. Pharmaceutical companies were now major economic players, and petroleum-based drug therapy became the gold standard of treatment. Public health seemed to improve dramatically. Infectious disease deaths dropped, surgery became safer, and life expectancy soared. However, new illnesses and cancers began to manifest in this newly medicated society. Many practitioners of herbal and nutritional medicine were pushed to the margins. Their centuries-old knowledge was disapproved and was sidelined by the new scientific hierarchy and the economic power behind industrial pharmaceuticals. During the early 20th century, Rockefeller interests began investing heavily in public relations. The infamous Ludlow Massacre of 1914 had damaged Rockefeller's image, so he hired journalist Ivy Lee, one of the first modern PR consultants, to reshape the public's opinion of him. Lee advised Rockefeller to publicize philanthropy. He then began to promote his new medical schools, health campaigns, and scientific institutions, discouraging any mention of the ones forced to close under this new structure. His strategy worked yet again. His public relations consultants reconfigured his name, and the public began to esteem these new foundations. The Rockefeller Foundation became synonymous with progress, hygiene, and science, and the link between modern medicine and trustworthy science became firmly planted in the public mind. Was this a coordinated takeover of media and medicine, or was it rather an alignment of interests? One industry funding supported the research that produced profitable, patentable outcomes, while natural or unstandardized remedies found it impossible to compete because of the imbalance in the level of funding and validation. As universities modernized, so to speak, subjects like botany, herbal pharmacology, and nutrition were dropped from medical curricula completely. After all, how do you patent a plant? Fast forward, and Monsanto has that answer for you. Now jumping back to the 1940s, a medical student might learn in detail how a synthetic drug affected cellular pathways, but very little to nothing about the role of diet or plant medicine. Modern doctors could tell you almost nothing about nutrition or general maintenance of the physical human body. This wasn't purely malicious. It reflected the scientific methods and economic incentives of the era. Basically, money talks, and all others are shut out. Pharmaceuticals could be patented, tested, and sold. There was so much money to be made with petroleum-based drugs. Herbs could not be patented or sold for huge profit margins, so these methods were not appealing to those in the upper echelon who were driven by greed and profit. The result of this crucifixion of health and healing knowledge was a long-term imbalance. Medicine focused heavily on treatment rather than prevention, and on chemistry rather than lifestyle. Meanwhile, new professional organizations, like the American Medical Association, AMA, set ethical and educational standards based on Rockefeller's selected scientific model. The AMA did receive massive grants from Rockefeller-related foundations for public health work. However, it claims to remain an independent association and not an instrument of any single donor. Today, over a century later, the pendulum is very slowly swinging back toward balance. Maybe it has been the surge of autoimmune diseases, or the rise of autism at exponential rates, or the extreme numbers of individuals, even youth, who are developing every type of cancer imaginable. But whatever reason, we as Americans are once again taking a look at our health. We are finally beginning to embrace a world where healing is possible, health is our birthright, and access to nutritional knowledge is our new gold standard. Research in nutritional science, microbiome health, and plant-based compounds is giving renewed respect to ideas once deemed as folk medicine by the influenced media. For example, the NIH's National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, NCCIH, now funds studies on herbs, acupuncture, and lifestyle medicine. Finally, modern medicine owes its place and limited progress to the millions and billions of dollars given by J.D. Rockefeller. Vaccines, antibiotics, sterile surgery, and evidence-based research have saved millions of lives for sure. However, it is always wise to seek truth and knowledge regarding your personal health. Stay informed, do your own research, read labels, read warnings, read side effects. The same revolution that narrowed our view of what counts as medicine is now struggling to come up with the amount of drugs needed to fix all of the new problems. The challenge to take back our health now is integration, combining the best of science with proven natural, dietary, and preventive approaches. Only then can we be well, whole beings. You'll sometimes hear claims that Rockefeller founded the American Cancer Society to hide the dangers of synthetic drugs. That's not completely accurate. The ACS began in 1913 as the American Society for the Control of Cancer, started by physicians and public health leaders of select medical facilities and universities to promote early detection of these newly found fatal cells. Rockefeller money supported cancer research through individual grants and approved institutes. It is true that many of the cancer treatment advances of the 20th century, from chemotherapy to targeted drugs, came out of the same research infrastructure that the newly vested Rockefeller philanthropy helped build. Still, criticism that this system favored chemical solutions over prevention is fair. For decades, nutrition and environmental factors in cancer received little to no attention, while new petroleum-based drug discovery held the forefront in funding and research. Only in recent years has prevention, diet, and lifestyle made a resurgence as the population learns to question what is best for their health. So, what's the takeaway? The story of Rockefeller and American medicine isn't a conspiracy. It's a case study in how money, science, and questionable values shape what we perceive as truth. Rockefeller's huge investments standardized and allocated the doctrine for modern, professionalized medicine, training in approved protocols, and built specific research universities that advanced a global system of regulation on human health. Big oil money also created a system that prizes patentable technology over traditional wisdom, leading one to question the ethics behind such big efforts. Why is profit at the heart of human health and well-being? Why is knowledge of plant-based medicine so hush-hush, even going as far as to say that herbal medicines are witchery and evil somehow? The real evil lies in the greed and desire for power over populations. But who am I to judge? For health-conscious people today, the lesson is not to reject modern medicine, but to understand its history, and to find your balance. People work best when they are open-minded. Science works that way too, when it's open-minded and researching and testing not just petroleum-based drugs, but diets, herbs, and lifestyle changes as well, and with the same rigor and especially funding. Rockefeller's influence on medicine shows how powerful ideas, and especially funding, can shape an entire country's view of healing. Today, as we face chronic diseases, environmental stress, and new epidemics more than ever, we can take inspiration from both sides of history, the precision of science and the wisdom of natural health. If this kind of deep dive helps you see the bigger picture, hit subscribe and share it with someone curious about how our medical system came to be.